What's up, guys? It's Josh here, back with another Kansas City Chiefs related video, and today I got another free agency suggestion, and this video is long overdue. I never made an official video on this idea, but today I'm going to be discussing the possibility of the Kansas City Chiefs signing free agent defensive end Justin Houston. So it was basically all but confirmed by Chris Ballard, the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, that they are not bringing back Justin Houston, not because he's a bad player or anything like that, but because they drafted Kwity Paye in the 2021 NFL draft, and that's kind of what they were waiting to see what would happen in the draft to comment on the situation with Justin Houston, and so they ended up replacing him with someone younger and cheaper, and they're just not all that interested in bringing back Justin Houston. So he remains a free agent, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs should definitely jump in on this. So the first reason they should is because, well, I mean, the obvious reason. It's Justin Houston. It would be so nice for Justin Houston and the Kansas City Chiefs to reunite and put the past behind them. I know it was kind of an ugly exit for both sides. I think Justin Houston was pretty pissed about the whole thing, but he still proved to be a pretty good player for the Indianapolis Colts. And you know, it's funny because when the Chiefs asked him to take a pay cut back prior to the 2019 season, he said no. And also the Chiefs were kind of, after he said no, they were quick to get rid of him because they didn't quite think he fit in their new 4-3 defensive scheme, whereas they played with Justin Houston in a 3-4 back when they still had Bob Sutton before they had the whole defensive overhaul. However, the funny thing is he ended up signing for about the amount that the Chiefs were willing to pay him in Indianapolis, where they also run a 4-3. So that whole deal just kind of never made sense, and I thought it was just Justin Houston being kind of petty about it. But now the Chiefs have a chance to bring back Justin Houston and make things right. Now, the second reason I think the Chiefs should be interested in Justin Houston is because they still need pass rush help, particularly from a veteran such as Justin Houston. You know, they drafted Joshua Kando, so they addressed defensive end in the draft. However, I still don't think they have enough. Taco Charlton, I liked him. He showed flashes. Full-time starter, no thank you. Mike Dana, showed flashes. Good pick for a fifth rounder, but is he ready to be relied on? I don't think so. And then the Chiefs also talked about playing Chris Jones out on the edge more, but how often are we going to see that? I wouldn't expect more than 20% of the snaps out on the edge for Chris Jones, because I mean he's more disruptive in the middle. You still got to keep him there majority of the time. And then, maybe Deshaun Wharton could play a little bit of edge, but at that point, it's like, okay, just sign another defensive end, okay? Like, just bring in a veteran. You should still be interested in Melvin Ingram. You should still be interested in Justin Houston, one of those guys to come in and give you some veteran pass rush help. And then there's Frank Clark, and you guys know my problems with Frank Clark, and I seem to bash him a lot on my channel, but, I did write an article several months back comparing Frank Clark and Justin Houston because there was this big controversy about who's better. Did the Chiefs, keep the right guy or sign the right guy? So I just have their stats right here, right in front of me from over the past 2 seasons, and they're pretty close. So here are Frank Clark's numbers over the past 2 years. 6 passes defended, 3 forced fumbles, 21 sacks, 66 tackles, 20 tackles for a loss, and 29 quarterback hits. Frank Clark also had a 55.7 run defense grade from PFF in 2020. Take that for what it's worth. Now, Justin Houston's numbers. He had 3 forced fumbles, 19.5 sacks, 69 tackles, 21 tackles for a loss, and 30 quarterback hits, along with a 60.5 run defense grade in 2020. So overall, they've been pretty similar over the past 2 seasons. However, when you take into account the fact that Frank Clark is making over $100 million and is playing on the same defensive line with Chris Jones, and Justin Houston is kind of putting up the same numbers, getting paid way less, it just kind of makes you shake your head a little bit. Of course, Justin Houston isn't what he was like 6 or 7 years ago, but can he still come in and be a good rotational veteran pass rusher? Absolutely. He wouldn't even have to start here, kind of like Melvin Ingram, similar to the video I made on him. You're just asking him to come in, be a veteran presence who has done it in the NFL before. Someone that can come in on third downs when you get that lineup of Justin Houston, Jerron Reed, Chris Jones, and Frank Clark. That's a pretty good defensive line right there. And that's, Joshua Kano can develop under him. Like I said, you got other guys that would just be depth pieces at that point, which would give you an overall really strong unit. Like I said, I'm making a lot of the same points that I've made in my other free agency suggestion videos. You just be adding really good depth. And Brett Veach even talked about, and he mentioned the defensive line specifically when making this point before the draft, that you should always be looking to add depth in positions that you might even think are okay, just because attrition can hit so fast, and specifically highlighted the 2019 season in which the Chiefs lost Alex Okafor and Emmanuel Ogbah, a position they seemed so loaded at one time, became really thin all of a sudden, which triggered them to go out and claim Terrell Suggs off of waivers later that year. So, why can't Justin Houston just be your Terrell Suggs now? And I think, Justin Houston has more left in the tank than Terrell Suggs did when the Chiefs signed him. And also an interesting stat I found is that, in 2019, Justin Houston was actually, or had the second most third down pressures with 25 of any defensive end that season. So again, someone that can come in on third down and be, a fearsome pass rusher that offenses have to take seriously. That's what the Chiefs really missed last year, is a defensive end that could come in opposite of Frank Clark, that offenses have to take seriously. They couldn't just run on that side. They couldn't just, not have to worry about any pass rush coming from that side. Just a good, solid defensive end to have in your rotation. If Justin Houston can come in here and have, a 6 or 7 sack season, that's perfect. That's great production from, your number 2 edge. And Frank Clark, he only had 6 sacks last year, so he'd be putting up Frank Clark numbers on the other side. So for those of you that do like Frank Clark, well, then Justin Houston would be, and I compared their stats earlier, it would be like bringing in another Frank Clark. So if you do like Frank Clark, why not just add another one to put on the other side, but at a much cheaper price? The longer this all drags out, Justin Houston back to Kansas City just seems like a match made in heaven. The way it ended, that shouldn't be how we remember Justin Houston. It would be awesome if we could bring him back and get him a ring as a Kansas City Chief and actually have him play a significant role in a Super Bowl season. Like I've said before, the offensive line was the biggest reason we lost the last Super Bowl. But what a lot of people don't talk about is Tom Brady faced the lowest amount of pressures that he ever has in a Super Bowl in 2020. The defensive line in that game was probably the second biggest reason we lost. Only got 4 pressures on Tom Brady. If you bring Justin Houston onto this defensive line, I expect that to greatly improve if the Chiefs and Buccaneers were to meet up again in the Super Bowl. So yeah, by now you pretty much get the point. I think Justin Houston back to Kansas City would be a great idea, and I hope it gains a little bit of steam in the coming weeks. We'll just have to see, but that's all I got. So let me know in the comments how you guys would feel about bringing back Justin Houston. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So make sure you like, share, subscribe this video so more Chiefs fans can find it. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and kckingdom.com. But that's all I got for today. Peace.